Hello again, class. Here's another example of working with Java methods. In this case, we're going to work on a method that takes a string argument and returns a string. And I thought we could play around with a name, a person's name, a first name and last name, in other words, a person's full name, and use an idea that was in your textbook. Back in chapter 4 on page 136. There's a discussion of some string methods, and right near the bottom of that page, there's a couple of lines of interest here that show you how you could take a full name and extract the first name and the last name out of that name. You first of all have to determine the location of the space in the name using s.indexOf, if s is the string. You locate the space with s.indexOf, and then you use substring to read the first characters, starting at character 0 up until you locate variable k, which is where the space was located, and then s.substring k plus 1, because you want to start reading one character after the space in order to read the last name from there until the end of the string. There's two different ways to use substring, one with two arguments and one with one. So let's use that idea there in program back here. So we'll ask the user to enter his or her first and last name, and then we'll read that input with scanner from the keyboard. You can see that we have imported the scanner class here, and we created an instance called input of scanner. We're going to use that for our keyboard input. Now, when we enter a string, though, there's a very important point here. We have to use next line. There are actually two methods for entering a string in the scanner class. One is next and the other is next line. The difference is this. Next stops reading when it encounters white space. So it's not going to work for a full name where you have two names separated by a space. So we need next line to read an entire string that could include spaces. Okay, that's a very important point about using strings with scanner. And then what we'll do is we'll parrot back whatever the user entered as the full name. And then we'll use a method called alpha name. And what I'd like to do is extract the first name and the last name and return the user's name in last name, comma, first name, the usual alphabetical order. So we should be able to do that inside a method. So here we have the method definition, and once again, notice it's public, static. It's got to be static because if we want to run a method up in main, since main is static, our method that we want to run has to be static. This method is going to return a string. The name of the method is alpha name, and we're going to pass it a string, and I've chosen to use the variable name here, just so we don't get confused with the full name and name, because those are different places in memory, because they are declared in different methods. Well, what we'll do is we'll use that code that was back there in chapter 4. We'll determine the location of the space using name.indexOf space, and we'll assign that to a variable k. And then we'll use the very same code that's back there to get the first name and the last name using the substring method of class string. And then here's the kicker that wasn't in the textbook back there. We're going to return the last name, comma, first name. By concatenation, we can join those together and we'll return that. And that, of course, is a string, and that's why this method is return type string, as indicated up here. So when we run it, let's see what we get here. I'll try, we'll pay homage to Mr. Gosling, the man who developed Java. And as you can see, we did enter James Gosling, and there it is. There's the alpha name. So the code seems to work. Well, it's an example of a method that works with a string and returns a string. No big deal. Just handle it like you would any other type of data. Call it by name. Because this method is returning a string, you'll notice how I've embedded it here. I've embedded it in the print line, systemout.println, and it'll get concatenated onto the string alphabetically your name is. Now we could have caught it in a separate variable and then used that variable name, but embedding it is a nifty technique that you'll often see used and that you should get good at. Hope that helps.